Yo, 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 what's going on, y'all? How y'all doing? It's your boy Big Mike in the building. I'm gonna wait for a minute, see who comes in. We're gonna have this, I don't wanna say debate. I just say a fact-finding mission about the party realignment situation. And I'm just gonna wait for a few minutes to let people get in here, sip my water, and we'll get to it here in a moment. But the name of this is, was there a political realignment or a party realignment in the history of America? Yes, there was a party realignment. Did it happen the way that people think it did or that we were taught it did? No. It's a very nuanced situation, and there was a lot of things going on during that time of said party realignment. And I'm going to tell you this. Let me adjust this. There's been more than one party realignment. There's been more than one party realignment. We're not taking the story back far enough. We're not going back to the origins of the story. And before I get started, I want people to understand that this is something that I've dedicated probably the last 20 years of my life to, 25 years of my life to. The study of history, the study of politics. I was raised by a very politically aware person. My grandmother is in the Alabama Supreme Court with cases. We're the ones who got the roads paved in Mount Vernon. I've seen boycotts. I've actually seen this happen in real life. I'm from the South, so I understand Southern politics. Probably a little bit, I don't know, I ain't gonna say less or more. I just understand Southern politics. I understand how things go in the South. I have a lot of relatives from the North and Midwest. And I'll tell you this, there's a difference between Northern politics, Midwestern politics, West Coast politics, and Southern politics. There's a big difference. And those of us who have families in different places, you can tell that. They'll be able to tell you that. But let's try to break it down in easily digestible chunks. We're gonna break it down and make it easily digestible. And you can go do your own research on this. You don't have to take my word for it. I'm not on Facebook spouting opinions. I'm on Facebook basically just putting out information that I get. And I know that in today's times, it's hard to believe that I'm not MAGA and this and that, but I just don't sway either direction when it comes to propaganda. I don't sway to either party unless they're talking about what I want them to talk about, the things that are important to me. At this point in time in American politics, I would say that the independent Green Party is probably talking more to me. Jill Stein and, you know, her platform. And Jill Stein is a white supremacist. Let's not get it twisted, right? They're all white supremacists. That's what you have to realize. Democrat, Republican, the whole American system is based off of that, right? The whole Constitution was written off of that. We've come to different times, and we've come to a time where white supremacist culture or white supremacist domination of this culture is coming to an end, which is why MAGA is so, I guess, so intense right now. They're fighting the last fight the best way they know how. Thing about it, half of them aren't trained warriors, so you're not going to be able to really get the same type of fight out of them like they're talking they're going to give you, you know? Am I scared of Donald Trump and, you know, his agenda and Agenda 2025 and all of that? I'm not afraid of that. I'm not afraid of that because I feel like Donald Trump and his followers were sent here to break down this system and this status quo, which has been very unfair and built off the black backs of my people. You know, so I do think that the system needs to be reformed. I think Donald Trump and the MAGA movement is the beginning of that reform by showing just how bad these people really are and how bad this system really is. You know, it's a capitalist country, but I would argue that America has not been capitalist since Jim Crow. Because capitalism, you can't place artificial constraints on the market, and not allowing black people to participate in the American economy was an artificial constraint, in which case capitalism died. This is more of a form of European socialism. And if you study European socialist governments, this acts just like that. It's a huge welfare system. And it's not a welfare system for the people that you think. It's a huge welfare system for Europeans. They've been brought here and they came here to extract the value out of this place and to leave. And you see that now with modern immigration, and you see that in the past with immigration. They came here to take. Not saying that I hate these people or something's wrong with the people. It has nothing to do with the people. It's the whole principle. It's the whole system, the whole situation. But we got a few people in here, so we had a back and forth, a pretty spirited back and forth today. I made a post of the Democrat and Republican voting split with the Civil Rights Act of 1964. It was a bipartisan bill, bottom line. But in that split, you had more Democrats by percentage that voted against it than Republicans. And that's where the crux of the argument is. People are like, oh, you're shitting on Democrats right now. Like, Democrats basically need a street team to promote them because they're on their last leg politically. But this is a position that they've left themselves in, and they left themselves in that position by avoiding their base. They did not take care of their base. They have not taken care of their base. And we can go through the presidents and talk about that. But George Reese and I were having a discussion back and forth on the presidents and the economy. And I don't think I responded to you, George, but I responded to you on here. But we were talking about the economy being better under Democratic presidents. And that is true. But it's only been under 3 Democratic presidents that the economy has been better. That, you know, we've actually seen the economy get better. 2 of them I'll say were artificial, and that's FDR and Obama. Clinton, I'll say, was probably the best economy that we've had in American history. He's probably the best president in American history on the economy because we wound up in the black dealing with Clinton. All right? So let's get to this party realignment. This story goes back to Reconstruction. Of course, you know, Civil War was fought. Slaves were freed after the Civil War was won. Lincoln assassinated. Immediately, Andrew Johnson, a Southern Tennessee Democrat, takes over. He was the vice president. Back then, it was kind of like the lieutenant governor in the governor situation in certain states, right? So Andrew Johnson took over. Andrew Johnson was a Confederate apologist. Okay, he wasn't a Republican. He was a Democrat. He's from Tennessee. And he was a tailor by trade. He sold clothes. But when he took over as president, he immediately moved to forgive the Confederate war criminals. You know, we had people that were on trial to be hung. You know, watch my words. We had people on trial to be executed as treasonous as Confederate soldiers under Lincoln. When Lincoln was assassinated, Andrew Johnson came. He pardoned that, okay? So blacks were able to vote. And a lot of Southern legislatures were black because blacks were able to vote their own representation in. This happened until 1877, about 1877. We didn't lose our right to vote in 1877, but you had a guy named Rutherford B. Hayes who took over as the president. Rutherford B. Hayes was a Republican. During that time, Rutherford B. Hayes ended Reconstruction. Once he ended Reconstruction, then all of these, the federal oversight of the southern states was completed. That's what Reconstruction was, for those who don't know. Reconstruction was when the federal government basically militarized the Confederate South, the old Confederate South, And it was under federal governors that the South was reconstructed. Okay? Basically, the Southerners they didn't have their own states. They didn't have control of their governments because they couldn't be trusted to have control of their governments. So Rutherford B. Hayes ended Reconstruction. Once Reconstruction ended, then the power went back into the Southern states' hands. You feel me? You get me? And that's when things like Jim Crow laws, things, voting, restrictions, the Ku Klux Klan, things like that. This is when all of this stuff really started to heat up. Okay? It took probably about 30 years. You look into about the early 1900s. But up to that point, blacks had been voting and blacks were running as Republicans. And I hate I have to keep saying this, and I hate I can't really just have a straight out conversation. I have to keep apologizing and telling people I'm not a Republican, okay? I'm not a Republican. I'm not voting for MAGA. Trump ain't running no more, so that's over with. I feel like the movement will probably die with him, but I'm not voting for what comes next either, okay? So that's my last time saying this during this. We're going to keep going with this teaching. Now, I've had a couple of people on there tell me that I should overturn stones and do my own research and things like that, as if they know I haven't. I'm qualified to talk about what I'm talking about, okay? And like I said, I'm taking all comers, any challengers. I told people I was coming on. They got a lot to say in the comments. Come on and, I'll bring you on a video. Come on and let's talk about it. But I've had some of the weirdest comments when I posted what I posted. The truth of the matter is, yes, 59, I think it was 159 Democrats voted for the Civil Rights Act in Congress, in the House. 138 Republicans voted for it. 150 Democrats, 138 Republicans voted for it. You had 90 plus Democrats that didn't vote for it in the House, and you had 27, I believe, Republicans, or 20 plus Republicans that didn't vote for it in the House. I could pull those numbers up. Let me look at that just so I can make sure I'm talking about, what I'm talking about, for those who want to try to stump me on the technicalities that they don't know shit about for real. But that's for another day. Let's take a look here. All right. Let me turn that down. Let me turn that down. Get off of here. Get off of here. Give me 1 second, y'all. Can't control my own Facebook, but let me find that one. There it is. All right. So the House of Representatives passed the Civil Rights Act of 1964 on February 10th by a vote of 290 to 130. So they won. Majority vote, 290 people to 130 people. The Democrats, 152 voted for, 96 voted against. So 61% of the Democrats were for the Civil Rights Bill, the Civil Rights Act. Republicans, who had the minority during that time, I think I made a typo last night on that. 138 voted for it, 34 voted against it. Now that's the House of Representatives. The Republicans, and this is according to the Wall Street Journal, the Republicans were 80% for it. And I'm going to get to my point. It's not what you think either. The Senate passed the bill after a 75-day filibuster from Southern Democrats. The Senate passed the bill 73 to 27. Democrats, 46 voted for it, 21 voted against it. Republicans, 27 voted for it, 6 voted against it. Now, of those 6 that voted against it, it's a couple of names, and this is how I know that we're not really having an honest conversation, because a certain name would come up when you're talking about political realignment and why there was a political party realignment at that time. First off, there wasn't an election in 1965. I've seen people say that blacks been with the Democrats since 1965. That's bullshit. And people were liking it too, but it's bullshit. There was no election in 1965. Find it. And I ain't talking about a special election for a dog catcher in Chitlin Switch Branch, Mississippi either. But it's a certain name that I'm looking for to come up in some of the points that you guys are making in order to even start taking it seriously, right? Why has nobody mentioned Barry Goldwater. Why has no one mentioned Barry Goldwater? Because Barry Goldwater is very important to why black people started voting Democrat. Barry Goldwater, Arizona Republican. And it's funny, Arizona didn't pass Martin Luther King Day until what, 1998, 1999? Barry Goldwater died in 1998. But he was an Arizona senator. And Barry Goldwater ran for president in 1964. Look it up. Your girl Hillary Clinton was a Goldwater girl. And Goldwater's ticket was extreme fiscal conservatism and staunch anti-communism. Now, for those who know, the Civil Rights Act and the Civil Rights Movement was always trying to be linked to communism by the FBI director, J. Edgar Hoover, which is why he was able to open up COINTELPRO and open up files on Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, Medgar Evers, and leaders and target them. That's what the movie Judas and the Black Messiah is about. It's the same program, COINTELPRO, right? So, Barry Goldwater, they did not have primaries in a lot of states that year for Republicans. Barry Goldwater, although unpopular, part of a six-person minority that didn't vote for the Civil Rights Act on the Republican side, he gets the nomination to become the president, okay? At that time, the black people that were voting voted against Barry Goldwater. They voted Democrat because Barry Goldwater was against the Civil Rights Act that was being proposed to be signed later in 1964, right? They were against that. So the reason that we went to vote Democrat was not because the Democrats were our saviors. If you keep in mind, George Wallace was a Democrat. George Wallace was a Democrat when he stood and blocked the entrance to the University of Alabama for Vivian Malone and James Hood. He was a Democrat then. And I'm not even talking about Dixiecrats. We'll get to the Dixiecrats because you guys got that all confused. Y'all got that all effed up for real. But we'll get to that. So people were voting for the Democrats because the Democrats had a civil rights bill that was really started by Kennedy, not Johnson. Kennedy started that. But Johnson would have lost the election to Barry Goldwater because Barry Goldwater was not only his enemy, he accused Johnson of using every dirty trick in the book. You read it, you can see it yourself. But Barry Goldwater was going to wax Johnson in the election. So Johnson had to have the Civil Rights Act. That's what he used to get the vote over. So once again, we jumped in. We helped the Democratic Party win the vote. You know why we helped the Democratic Party win the vote that year? It's because they had something on the table for us. We're here now. Life is better than it's ever been for a lot of our families. We making money. We got things, right? And it's blue no matter who. And then we go back to this mythical civil rights days to where the Democrats have just been our champions this whole time. They have not been our champions the whole time. One thing our people knew that we don't know, and I will say that the older generation, especially the silent generation before the civil rights generation, the silent generation, my grandmother's people, 1928, 1921, people that were born during that time frame. These people were very politically savvy because they voted on the issue. Barry Goldwater did not want, as a Republican, Barry Goldwater did not want black people to have civil rights, right? Black people knew this. They heard it. They read it. We talked about it, discussed it. We had political salons. We had all of that stuff, right? Salons. Not saloons, but salons, right? We talked about this stuff. The Democrats had something on the table for us. It wasn't just vote against Barry Goldwater because you're going to lose all your rights. No, we had rights. We had a package for us, right? So we can't agree with this, right? Our folks did vote according to the policy, correct? We voted for a policy. We didn't vote for a party, we voted for a policy. Because both parties have ample enough history to show you that they're both white supremacists. And that's another double entendre for realignment. Yeah, the motherfuckers realigned with each other under the tenets of white supremacy and white domination and world domination. It went deeper than the United States. Mike, man, what's happening, man? What's happening, Cream? So that's why we voted with Democrats in 1964. For those who are saying 65, there was no 65 election. The next election was in 1968. So let's talk about 1968 a little bit. Very pivotal year in a lot of things. Everything was happening in 1968, right? I mean, America was on fire. Basically, it was after the Civil Rights Act, that's when it became a danger to the public, the racism and the things that were going on with the police state and whatnot, and the conditions of the great society that was enacted, you know, with the welfare state and basically, you know, especially urban blacks being forced into ghettos and segregated that way, right? So in 1968, Richard Nixon was running for president. Richard Nixon employed, and his advisors and handlers, they employed what you call the Southern strategy. Now, I've seen Southern strategy and Dixiecrat put into the same sentence when it's really not the same thing. The Dixiecrat movement started in the late 30s, and it was really prevalent during the 1948 election when you had people running for president on the Democratic ticket in the primaries. Look up the 1948 primary, very contentious primary, because you had people like Strom Thurmond out of South Carolina running for president. Strom Thurmond was an independent as well at the end. Toward the end, he was an independent. He was still racist as hell. He stayed an independent so he could switch back and forth between parties depending on the changing demographics of his territory, right? Joe Lieberman did the same thing. So, where was I at? Richard Nixon's Southern strategy. Dixiecrats. 1948 primaries. Check that out. The Dixiecrats were Southern Democrats. Southern Democrats who ran on a segregation platform. George Wallace, Strom Thurmond, it's a couple of more guys, you know, that are in there as well. That's where the term Dixiecrat really first started coming from. But how did we get Dixiecrats? How did we get Dixiecrats? And that's where we'll get to the party realignment situation. So, after Rutherford B. Hayes took the office and black people were able to start voting, Southern Democrats started becoming Republicans. And that was early on. That was in the late 1800s. Some of the Southern Democrats started becoming Republicans. Some of the Northern Republicans started becoming Democrats. So there was a realignment in that aspect of it. And you know what it was about. It was about Jim Crow laws. It was about, you know, about doing harm to black people. So that's why the Southerners kind of split off, right? But blacks were voting overwhelmingly Republican at that time. So a lot of Southern Republicans switched to Democrat. So there's always been back and forth and hopping back and forth between the parties. But when you understand as a black person, a black American, no party is for your good. We're not at the center of any party's interests, right? And other than votes, other than getting our votes. No party has had a platform that said, hey, man, we're here to do this for black people, this for black people, this for black people. The Democrats did the Civil Rights Act for themselves to win power. I posted something yesterday about a statement that was supposedly allegedly made by Lyndon B. Johnson about signing this act. I have these ends voting for voting Democrat for the next 200 years. People immediately jumped down my throat. There's no verifiable proof. You know, he didn't put it on his IG, so it doesn't exist, right? But there is an eyewitness account that he did say this on Air Force One. He was known to use the N-word frequently anyway because he was a staunch racist, him and Lady Bird. Staunch racist. But when it came to that, nah, that's not what he was doing it for. He ain't say that. He said nigga all the other time. He just didn't say it that time. I'm going to go with I believe he said it because you're seeing the results of it now. We are no longer voting on policy. We're voting off emotions and we're voting off party lines. So let's talk about how these parties are comprised, because every Republican isn't the same Republican as a MAGA Republican. Every Democrat isn't the same Democrat as a progressive leftist like AOC or Bernie Sanders. They're just not. You have different degrees of these. I guess I'll put it in a term that people can explain. You got Bloods and you got Crips, right? Bloods and Crips. But within those Bloods and Crips are different factions and different sets. Yes, they're all Crips, they're all Bloods, but they handle different territories. They have a different set of demographics that they have to handle. Different gangs that they have to fight, different territories that they have to protect, right? A different set of interests. But they're still Crips. Still Bloods. They will fight each other. They will kill each other. That's the Democratic and Republican Party. They're all split into factions. It's different groups with different interests. Simply what I'm saying is instead of vote blue no matter who, we have, what, 3 years? 2 years. We have 2 years until the next presidential election. There's no reason in the world why we can't have a bank, money set aside to donate to candidates to protect our interests. Or maybe even a super PAC, or maybe even a lobbying firm. We don't have any of these things. And we wonder why so many groups get more than us is because they know how to wield their political power. Asians aren't sitting out talking about vote blue no matter who, right? They got a whole hate crime bill. You know why? Because they paid for a hate crime bill. They paid for it. They don't promise their vote to any candidate. You don't even know how they vote most of the time. And I'm going to tell you who's big on it. The Hispanics. They're very big on not telling anybody how they vote. They're the surprise trick vote now. We just get shamed and talked about when we don't vote blue no matter who, which is like a totally crazy way to think about things. But I do understand that the Democratic platform offers something for everybody, right? It's a big, very big tent. So now intersectional groups and things like that have started to become involved. Now there is no real black interest, right? Because you're never just black. It's black and something else. You're either LGBT first and black second. You're either black and brown, but it's always coupled with something else, right? So there is no real black interest. They just inextricably link our interest to everybody else's interest, and we're on this rising tide lifts all boats. That's not the case. Our problem in America is an economic problem because racism hasn't gone anywhere. You still got people that'll do the same thing that they did to Emmett Till today, right? We see it every day. So we've had zero success in changing people's mindsets. So we need to change the way we go about it. That's why I'm critical of Democrats on my page. That's why I'm putting all this information out here. And I know it's making some of you angry, and it's intended to make you angry, and it's intended to make you think. We have time, guys. We have time to put together a real political plan. We have time to really get behind a candidate that's talking about what we want to talk about. We can organize that. We can move that. We can motivate people to get out and do that. But you're not going to be able to motivate black men to get out just because it's, not all black men. It's a lot of black men that are, I'm not going to say you're less than a man. I'm not going to say anything like that. But I will say that you guys are used to living under gynocracy. So, whatever they say do, whatever the women say do is what you're going to do. Thing about women and voting, I'm not trying to go back to the Stone Age here, but have you ever seen men that didn't vote for the betterment of everybody, the greater good for everybody, I think if given the opportunity, women would literally just vote for women's rights and nobody else's. And they've kind of shown that. We can get into the whole liberal platform and the soft genocide and all of the things that happened after that, but let's circle back to why we're originally on here. We're on here talking about the party realignment. It's a book out here that you can read. It's called Old South, The New Politics of the Old South. It breaks down gerrymandering. And like I told you last night, the Democrats have been gerrymandering too. Jim Clyburn has been gerrymandering year after year after year after year. His district gets redrawn damn near every time it's time to run. And you can go check that out too. It's public record. So once you start, it would be different if they weren't involved in it, period, right? If Democrats had never gerrymandered and the Republicans were doing this. The problem right now is the Republicans are winning at the game that they've both been playing. So now they're going to put the social pressure on you. And you're going to vote for them without anything. And that's the goal. There were emails leaked from the DNC back during the BLM movement. And it wasn't the DNC, it was the DCCC. It was the DCCC. Some emails leaked about how to handle Black Lives Matter protesters. And, you know, because protesters were showing up at these town hall meetings and they were asking questions. So the formula was this. Acknowledge. Listen, acknowledge. Don't promise anything tangible. Don't promise anything from a policy standpoint. So they've been instructed to not listen to us when it comes to policy, which is why we're getting cussed out by politicians when we approach them in public. And, you know, they're real ornery and old to be getting so much money. I ain't gonna lie. So that's a problem to me. I know you guys don't want MAGA around and this and that. And, you know, you're scared of Trump and you think Trump's gonna come get you out your bed in the middle of the night and all that, you know, but the real deal is, or maybe you're scared he's gonna kick out all that Venezuelan, you know what, that you've been getting up on out here in the streets. I don't know. But, we should never position ourselves to where we don't want anything for our vote. We definitely shouldn't do it with the party that says they're for us. And like I've posted before, I'm sticking to my guns on this one. I hold those who say they're for me, I hold you more accountable than my enemies. My enemy's job is to destroy me. But if you say you're for me, your job is to help me. If you're not actively doing that, then you're worse than the enemy. I know people are still going to jump back on he's MAGA, he's secretly MAGA, and whoop-de-whoop. I wish somebody would give me a check. I really do. But that's not what's happening, guys. This is just from my viewpoint, my standpoint, based off of what I've researched, the stones I've overturned in my life over the past 25 years. And I start breaking out some of my old papers and research papers and posting those shits. I got to find it. Yeah, your boy do this for real. I do this for real. So when I come on, or when you come on my show, or you come on the live in the comments or whatever, just know I might ask you for sources. We're not dealing with opinion. We're not dealing with emotion, because all of that stuff is out of whack. It's all out of whack. Can't be trusted. We got to deal with cold, hard facts. The cold, hard facts is yes, the parties did realign several times. Did the people realign? No. The parties realigned. The people always voted on policies. That's all I got today, man. Y'all have a good weekend, good evening, good afternoon. This your boy signing off, Big Mike. Peace.